I promise, unless you marry me, I'll kill you. I'm making a joke.
Defendant is guilty of the crime of sexual battery. Defendant is guilty of the crime of forcible oral sodomy, and punishment is set at 16 years.
He is the real-life version of Hannibal Lecter.
We're taught to call them in moments of fear, the people sworn to serve, protect, and restore order in society. But what happens when those people become the threat themselves? When the very officers meant to uphold the law start abusing it in ways that strip civilians from their lives? Tonight, we're going through 5 cases where men in uniform crossed the line, police officers who turned their authority into opportunity and their duty into violence. These aren't isolated mistakes. They're reminders that power without accountability can become the most dangerous weapon of all.
You are watching Crime Insider. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and drop a like on the video.
He was supposed to protect people, a former police officer living quietly in a California suburb, mowing his lawn, waving to neighbors, and watching his TV in peace. But behind those blinds sat the man who had broken into over 100 homes, tied up families, and whispered to his victims, then he'd leave them there, terrified, while he vanished without a trace. He committed an escalating chain of burglaries, assaults, and ultimately murders that spanned across the state. For decades, the trail stayed cold. No name, no face, only a pattern that stretched across California, until years later, when a single overlooked clue sealed his fate. How does a man sworn to protect the public become the predator who haunts it himself? It started in Visalia, 1974. A wave of odd burglaries swept the town. Whoever was doing it seemed to know the layout of each home, taking small items but leaving evidence of control. The press called him the Visalia Ransacker. When he was interrupted during an attempted abduction in 1975, he shot and killed a local man, Claude Snelling. Then the crime stopped, and investigators lost their suspect. By the next year, the same signature appeared hundreds of miles north, near Sacramento. Women were attacked in their homes at night. Their partners were bound, plates stacked on their backs while the attacker moved between rooms. More than 50 victims across multiple counties described the same masked man, but leads went nowhere. Police called him the East Area Rapist. He studied neighborhoods, slipped in through sliding doors, vanished before patrols arrived. In 1978, a young couple, Brian and Katie Maggiore, were shot dead while walking their dog after spotting someone lurking between houses. That's when detectives realized the rapist had crossed a line. He was now a killer. Months later, the same pattern began turning up hundreds of miles south. Ventura, Orange, Santa Barbara. Entire families were found bound and bludgeoned in their beds, which earned him the new nickname, the original Night Stalker. By 1986, 18-year-old Janelle Cruz was murdered in her Irvine home, the final known victim, and then silence. For decades, the case remained a tangle of unsolved files spread across half the state. DNA connected the rapes and murders in 2001, proving it was one man, but his identity stayed hidden. Retired detectives still met to compare notes. Families kept calling for updates that never came. Then a true crime writer, Michelle McNamara, reignited attention with her book, I'll Be Gone in the Dark. Her work pushed the story back into the national spotlight. By 2016, the FBI reopened the search, offering a reward and modern testing. Investigators tried something new for that era, which was called genetic genealogy. They uploaded the unknown DNA profile to a public database, tracing distant relatives and building family trees. One branch led to a quiet retiree in Citrus Heights, Joseph James DeAngelo Jr., 72 years old, former police officer. In April 2018, officers collected DNA from his trash can and car door handle. The match was exact. 44 years after the first burglary, the Golden State Killer had a name. When confronted, he said almost nothing. Neighbors described him as polite but private, a man who kept his blinds closed. 2 years later, in 2020, DeAngelo pleaded guilty to 13 murders and admitted to dozens more attacks beyond the statute of limitations. Survivors filled the courtroom, reading statements through tears and anger. The judge sentenced him to life without parole. For the first time, the long trail of fear had an ending. His case reshaped modern policing. Genetic genealogy became a cornerstone for cold case work nationwide. To investigators, it proved that patience, evidence, and data could do what fear and time could not. And to the families who waited through decades of silence, it meant one thing: the man who watched from the shadows was finally seen. On the 12th of February 2013, a cabin burned in the San Bernardino Mountains while officers surrounded the perimeter. Inside, they heard a single gunshot before flames consumed the entire cabin. When investigators searched through the debris, they found a wallet, a driver's license, and human remains, which were later confirmed through dental records. The man inside was Christopher Jordan Dorner, a former police officer who had declared war on his own department. For 9 days, 5 counties had been locked down under one of the largest manhunts in California's history. What began as an internal complaint ended with 4 people dead and an entire state asking what exactly happened that turned a trained officer into a target for his own profession. According to Navy and LAPD records cited by ABC News, Christopher Dorner served first as a U.S. Navy Reserve lieutenant, deploying to Bahrain in 2006. After returning home, he joined the Los Angeles Police Department in 2005. But 2 years later, while still probationary, Christopher Dorner reported that his training officer had used excessive force against a handcuffed suspect. The department investigated and ruled that his claim was false. In 2008, he was formally terminated for making untrue statements. Court appeals were filed but resulted in dismissal, confirming the department's decision. By 2013, those events had hardened into grievance. When a lengthy online manifesto appeared under Christopher Dorner's name, it accused LAPD of racism, corruption, and retaliation. The post listed more than 40 names and warned that retribution was coming. Investigators treated it as both confession and threat. By the first week of February, the dispute over a training report had escalated into a public safety emergency. On the 3rd of February 2013, Irvine police discovered 2 people unalived inside a parked car, Monica Kwan and Keith Lawrence. According to AP News, Monica was the daughter of Randall Kwan, a retired LAPD captain who had represented Christopher Dorner during his disciplinary hearing. The connection aligned precisely with names listed in the manifesto. Detectives confirmed that Christopher Dorner's manifesto referenced both Kwans directly, making the double homicide the first confirmed act in his campaign. Patrols expanded statewide, and law enforcement agencies circulated his image to every department in Southern California. 4 days later, the threat reached uniformed officers. On February 7, in Riverside, California, 2 officers sat at a traffic light when a vehicle pulled alongside and opened fire. Officer Michael Crane was unalived instantly. His partner was gravely wounded. Within hours, separate teams searching for Christopher Dorner mistakenly fired on 2 unrelated vehicles in Torrance, one driven by newspaper carriers, the other by a local resident, David Perdue. Internal investigations later confirmed both shootings were cases of mistaken identity. According to city settlements and official statements, 8 officers were disciplined, and more than $6 million were paid to the victims. Public anxiety rose sharply. Schools closed, highways locked down. For 9 days, residents across 5 counties were warned to stay indoors as hundreds of officers and federal agents searched mountain roads and lake towns for a single fugitive. Over 9 days, Christopher Dorner was linked to multiple shootings across Orange, Los Angeles, Riverside, San Bernardino, and San Diego counties. By this stage, Christopher Dorner was linked to 4 fatal attacks and multiple wounded officers. When investigators found a burned-out Nissan Titan near Big Bear Lake, they confirmed it matched Christopher Dorner's vehicle registration. According to the LA Times, the footprints led away from the truck toward cabin tracts. Teams combed hundreds of homes and empty rentals. A local couple later reported that a man resembling Christopher Dorner entered their property, restrained them, and stole their car. That tip redirected law enforcement to nearby Highway 38. Gunfire erupted soon after, killing 1 deputy and injuring another during the pursuit. Convoys of armored vehicles, tactical teams, and news helicopters converged on a remote area near Angeles Oaks. The chase had reached its final stand. Deputies surrounded a small rental cabin and exchanged continuous fire with the suspect inside. According to the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department, chemical agents were launched to force surrender. Moments later, smoke and flames rose through the roof. Witnesses and radio recordings captured officers ordering evacuation as ammunition exploded in the heat. After the fire subsided, forensic teams recovered identification, weapons, and human remains. The county coroner confirmed a single self-inflicted gunshot wound as the cause of death. Sheriff officials stated that no direct order had been given to ignite the cabin, emphasizing that certain tear gas canisters can cause fires. For investigators, the manhunt had ended. For policy analysts, accountability had just begun. In the weeks that followed, the LAPD reopened Christopher Dorner's termination file and reviewed its internal affairs process. Separate inquiries examined the Torrance shootings and the multi-agency command structure used during the search. According to departmental briefings and public reports, 8 officers faced administrative penalties, and the city paid civil settlements to the civilians wounded in mistaken engagements. Officer Michael Crane and the other victims were honored in official memorials. The case became a teaching model in police academies nationwide, a study in escalation, interagency coordination, and crisis communication. For journalists, it marked one of the first manhunts documented live across social media and broadcast feeds. For law enforcement, it exposed gaps between personnel management and early warning systems for officer distress. But 10 years later, the question still stands. If that internal complaint had been handled with transparency and trust, could the entire 9-day tragedy have been prevented? She was discovered inside her home, lying in an empty bathtub. No forced entry, no signs of struggle, and nothing missing from the home. Investigators ruled it an accident and moved on. But 3 years later, another woman disappeared with no traces. The search went on for weeks, but her file was closed as a missing person report with no investigation for any other possibilities. The only thing these cases had in common was that both women were married to the same police sergeant, Drew Peterson. Both cases were closed before anyone realized they were connected. For years, the files sat in separate drawers, one labeled accident and the other labeled missing, until the investigators noticed both stories shared the same signature from the officer who wrote the reports, and when that detail surfaced, it forced the department to turn its attention inward, leaving them with one important question. When the investigator and the killer are the same man, who is left to question the evidence? In March 2004, Bolingbrook police responded to a home in the suburbs of Chicago. Inside, they found 40-year-old Kathleen Savio, the third ex-wife of Sergeant Drew Peterson, unresponsive in a bathtub that was completely dry. Investigators documented a quiet scene. The room showed no disruption, and nothing immediately indicated a crime. The coroner's office listed the death as accidental, suggesting that it was likely a slip-and-fall death. Within weeks, the file was closed, and Peterson's name appeared only in the routine sections of the report. At that point, Peterson was already divorced from Kathleen and newly married to another woman, 23-year-old Stacy Peterson. No one raised questions. The department moved on, and the Savio case faded from local attention. But on the 28th of October 2007, that silence broke. Family members of Stacy Peterson reported her missing after she failed to show up for a scheduled visit and didn't answer her phone. According to contemporaneous reports, her vehicle was later located near a park close to her home, but there was no sign of her. Search teams, officers, and volunteers combed through nearby fields and waterways for days. By the end of that week, investigators labeled her a missing person. As media coverage expanded, attention quickly shifted to her husband, the same Drew Peterson, who had once been linked to a previous accident. When asked about Stacy's whereabouts, Peterson told reporters she had left him and run off with another man. Detectives didn't find evidence to support that claim. And when they reviewed past records, one older file stood out: Kathleen Savio's. Stacy's disappearance forced the Will County State's Attorney to reopen the Savio investigation. According to court filings, Savio's body was exhumed, and a new autopsy was performed. The new findings listed the manner of death as homicide. That reclassification changed everything. Investigators began reviewing statements from friends, relatives, and fellow officers. Multiple witnesses told police that both women had expressed fear before their deaths or disappearances. In Illinois, hearsay evidence rules are narrow, but prosecutors argued the statements fit an exception under state law. With the new forensic report and the prior relationship history, prosecutors believed they had enough to move forward. In May 2009, Drew Peterson was arrested and charged in connection with Savio's death. Peterson's trial began in the summer of 2012 after years of pre-trial arguments over what the jury could hear. Prosecutors presented medical experts, testimony from colleagues, and statements from family members. According to AP News coverage, jurors were shown photographs of the bathroom and forensic reports describing injuries inconsistent with a fall. Defense attorneys argued that Savio's death was accidental and that the statements admitted under the hearsay rule were unreliable. After 5 weeks of testimony, the jury found Drew Peterson guilty. In February 2013, he received a 38-year sentence. For investigators, the verdict confirmed what they had suspected since 2007. But it didn't solve the second mystery. Stacey Peterson was still missing. While serving his sentence, Peterson drew new attention from law enforcement. In 2015, prosecutors announced another case, a plan uncovered inside the prison system involving threats against the Will County State's attorney who had handled his trial. According to official filings, recorded conversations, and informant testimony detailed an alleged effort to harm the prosecutor. A jury later convicted Peterson of solicitation and solicitation for hire. In 2016, a judge added another 40 years to his sentence, to be served consecutively. At that point, Peterson's total prison time stood at 78 years. He was transferred out of Illinois to a federal facility for security reasons. His police pension was revoked following the convictions. Multiple appeals were filed. None overturned the judgments. More than a decade later, Drew Peterson remains in custody. Court records show continued motions for new trials and mental fitness evaluations, but the original verdict still stands. Savio's family considers the case resolved. Stacey Peterson's relatives continue to search. Over the years, new search efforts have targeted canals and wooded areas across northern Illinois, including one large operation near Lockport in 2021. Authorities confirmed that no human remains linked to Stacey have been identified. For many, the unanswered question remains unchanged. 2 women, 1 officer, 2 files once labeled accident and missing, a department forced to investigate one of its own, and a single mystery that still shadows both cases. If the person sworn to protect the public is the one under suspicion, how many truths stay hidden behind a badge? He was a veteran police officer with nearly 2 decades on the force, trained, experienced, and trusted. But in less than 10 seconds, his decision turned a routine call into a fatal shooting. An unarmed man stood in his own garage, holding a cell phone and a set of keys. The officer's body camera was off, and when the gunfire stopped, no one moved to help the man bleeding on the floor. For 10 minutes, there was no medical aid, no sense of urgency, just silence recorded by the cameras that switched on too late. The man was Andre Hill, the officer was Adam Coy, and the footage that never existed became the center of one of Ohio's most consequential police trials. If every department requires body cameras, and every officer is trained to use them, then why was no body cam footage ever found? And how does an unarmed civilian end up getting shot by the very people sworn to protect him? On the 22nd of December 2020, when Columbus police received a non-emergency call, a resident reported someone repeatedly turning a car on and off inside a garage on Oberlin Drive. 2 officers were dispatched, Adam Coy and Amy Detwiller. Body camera policy required each officer to activate recording when exiting the patrol car. Coy didn't. When they arrived, they saw the garage door open and a man inside. Andre Hill, 47, stepped out with his left hand raised. In his right hand, He held a glowing cell phone and a set of keys. Seconds later, Coy fired his service weapon. Hill collapsed in the driveway. The body camera, still inactive, captured only silent video from its automatic pre-record buffer. No audio, no warning, and no explanation of what the officer saw. By the time backup arrived, Hill was unresponsive. According to investigators, officers did not begin medical aid until about 10 minutes after the shooting. He was pronounced dead shortly after paramedics reached the scene. The case that started as a suspicious vehicle call now carried the weight of a homicide investigation. Why did the camera stay off? And why did trained officers fail to help a dying man? Within hours, the Columbus Division of Police placed Coy on administrative leave. Chief Tom Quinlan ordered an internal investigation and reviewed the body camera buffer video. It confirmed the shot, but not the moments before it. By December 28, Quinlan recommended termination. Coy was fired that same week for excessive use of force and failure to activate the camera. The city's leaders called the incident unacceptable and pledged transparency. But the outrage only grew. Protests filled downtown streets demanding accountability. Community leaders said Hill's death exposed a wider pattern of delayed medical care and inactive cameras. By January 2021, the mayor asked Chief Quinlan to step down. A civil rights investigation began under state oversight. The first step toward criminal charges was already underway. On the 3rd of February 2021, a Franklin County grand jury indicted Adam Coy. He was charged with murder, felonious assault, and 2 counts of dereliction of duty for failing to activate his camera and for not warning his partner of a perceived threat. Coy entered a not guilty plea. The case moved from internal review to the courtroom. According to the Ohio Attorney General's office, the decision to prosecute a police officer for murder was rare but necessary. Prosecutors argued that Hill posed no threat and that Coy's failure to record or assist him violated every policy safeguard designed to prevent exactly this outcome. For the city, the question became, if accountability exists on paper, what enforces it in practice? By the 14th of May 2021, the city of Columbus reached a $10 million settlement with Andre Hill's family, the largest in city history at that time. The mayor called it both a moral and financial admission of responsibility. That same month, the city council passed Andre's law, requiring officers to activate body cameras upon exiting vehicles and to render immediate medical aid, including CPR when necessary. It was one of the first direct policy reforms named for a victim of a police shooting in Ohio. Publicly, the city promised change. Privately, the legal process continued, slow, procedural, and contested. Coy's trial was delayed multiple times through 2022 and 2023, as defense attorneys sought independent reviews of evidence. But reform had already taken root. Andre's law turned tragedy into statute, forcing every future officer to do what Adam Coy did not. The trial finally began on the 21st of October 2024. Coy's defense claimed he mistook the light from Hill's phone for a gun muzzle flash and fired in fear for his life. Prosecutors countered that Hill never made a threatening move, and the video showed only a cell phone's light, not a weapon. According to court filings reviewed by AP News, Coy's training required verbal commands before firing. None were recorded. After 2 weeks of testimony and body camera analysis, the jury delivered its verdict on the 4th of November 2024. Coy was found guilty of murder, reckless homicide, and felonious assault. For Andre Hill's family, it was the first acknowledgement that the system could convict one of its own. But the larger test would come in sentencing. Would accountability carry weight beyond one case? On the 28th of July 2025, Adam Coy was sentenced to 15 years to life in prison. His motion for a new trial had been denied a month earlier, and by August 29, his attorneys filed an appeal with the 10th District Court of Appeals. In public statements, prosecutors said the verdict reaffirmed that no badge places anyone above the law. For the Hill family, it marked the end of one trial but not the end of the story. Today, Andre's law remains active in Columbus, and other Ohio cities have adopted similar policies, Body cameras now activate automatically upon patrol car exit. Officers are required to provide aid immediately after any use of force. These rules exist because one man died without them. As the city looks forward, one question continues to linger. If it takes a missing video to change a system, how many more must be lost before every life counts equally under the camera's lens? In less than 2 years, one patrol officer stopped dozens of women. Many of them never wrote reports, while some never made it back to their homes. When the complaint reached internal investigators, they realized they weren't looking at a simple policy violation. They were uncovering a pattern. Each woman told a similar story about what happened after the stop. When investigators lined up the evidence, 13 names pointed to one badge, which belonged to Daniel Holtzclaw. He wasn't hunting just criminals. He was hunting credibility. And a question that still divides the department: if every stop was logged, every route recorded, how did it take 6 months for anyone to see the pattern? On the 18th of June 2014, a 57-year-old woman reported an assault during a traffic stop on the city's northeast side. She told Oklahoma City Police that the officer ordered her to expose herself while he stood armed beside the patrol car. According to police statements, her account reached Internal Affairs the same morning. Supervisors compared her description to patrol assignments. Only one name matched her location and time window: Officer Daniel Holtzclaw, badge 2639. Investigators began reviewing his automatic vehicle location data, showing he had made an unscheduled stop at that address. Detectives interviewed the complainant again on June 19. Her statement was recorded, logged, and forwarded to the Sex Crimes Unit. That referral formally opened the case. Detectives used Holtzclaw's dispatch records to trace previous late-night stops. According to court filings, they cross-referenced names run through his mobile terminal between February and June 2014. Within a week, additional women were identified. One, age 34, said she had been stopped walking home and forced into oral sex and a closed business. Another described being told she would go to jail unless she complied. Each account involved the same patrol car and the same sequence: stop, search, coercion, release. Police Chief Bill Chitty confirmed to reporters that investigators recognized a pattern and acted immediately. Holtzclaw was placed on administrative leave while detectives requested search warrants for his phone and duty logs. On the 21st of August 2014, Oklahoma City Police arrested Daniel Holtzclaw in the parking lot of a gym on a warrant for sexual assault. The affidavit listed 6 initial victims. Prosecutors later expanded the filing to 13 as more came forward. Court records show he was charged with 36 felony counts: first-degree rape, second-degree rape, forcible oral sodomy, sexual battery, and procuring lewd exhibition. Holtzclaw pleaded not guilty. By September, investigators completed a 260-page report detailing vehicle tracking data, warrant checks, and phone logs that matched each complainant's timeline. According to District Attorney David Prater, the evidence established a calculated pattern under color of law. Jury selection began in November 2015 in Oklahoma County District Court. 13 women testified. Prosecutors presented dispatch data, AVL tracking, and surveillance clips verifying Holtzclaw's presence at each scene. The defense argued consent or mistaken identity, noting inconsistent statements and the absence of body camera footage. Prosecutors countered that department policy prohibited solo male searches of female detainees, making each contact improper from the start. On the 10th of December 2015, after 4 days of deliberation, the jury found Holtzclaw guilty on 18 of 36 counts. On the 21st of January 2016, Judge Timothy Henderson sentenced Holtzclaw to 263 years in prison, to be served consecutively. According to the Oklahoma Department of Corrections, the sentence required service of at least 85% on violent counts before eligibility for parole review. Following sentencing, Police Chief City held a public briefing stating that the department's reputation was damaged, but accountability was necessary. The victims were referred to counseling through state services. In interviews recorded by local outlets, several women expressed relief, but said the outcome did not erase what had occurred. Holtzclaw's attorneys filed a direct appeal to the Oklahoma Court of Criminal Appeals, alleging improper joinder and flawed forensic interpretation. On the 1st of August 2019, the court affirmed the conviction and full sentence. The U.S. Supreme Court denied certiorari on the 9th of March 2020. Subsequent filings raised concerns about the trial judge's later misconduct in unrelated cases, but no ruling has altered Holtzclaw's status. As of October 2025, he remains in state custody under protective placement. Civil suits against the city followed. Public records show multiple settlements approved between 2019 and 2023 for victims named in the criminal case. The question that remains is procedural, not emotional. How did a system built on supervision, logs, and accountability allow one officer to weaponize every safeguard designed to prevent it?